Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Amber Ledbury, the Outreach Coordinator at Climate Action Now. It will be just a few moments while people continue to gather. While we're waiting for everyone to join, I invite you to answer the icebreaker question that you'll see pop up on your screen in just a moment. The first question is, where are you joining from? And the second question is, what's the most unusual place you've ever seen solar panels? If you're feeling up for it, please also share your video so we can all see each other. We will be recording this event and it will be available publicly online. If you do not wish to appear in any shared content, please keep your camera off. We will be sending out the recording after this event. I'm very grateful that everyone is here today because even though the news has been very upsetting lately, there's still hopeful information about the climate. People just don't hear enough about it. So thank you for joining us today to get your March monthly dose of climate hope. I'll now turn things over to Kaylee Beam, our Director of Content at Climate Action Now.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kaylee Beam, and I'm Director of Content at Climate Action Now. Please, just as you're coming in, just share where you're joining from and answer that icebreaker question in the chat. I'm very curious to see some of the answers to this question about most unusual place you've ever seen solar panels. So keep those answers coming, responding to the icebreaker in the chat. And while you're doing that, I'm going to get us warmed up by taking an action together, inspired by our featured speaker's work. So if you've been to any of our recent events, you already know the drill. We'll be using the Can Action Carousel to take action today. This web-based version of the Climate Action Now app makes it easy to send well-researched, personalized messages to business leaders and political decision makers. It offers an endless stream of actions, measures your personal impact, and lets you earn points towards the planting of real trees. And the best part is that any environmental organization, local chapter of a larger group, or community group who wants to scale up their impact can get one, whether they have their own website or not. So let me just share my screen and show you just how easy it is to take action with the Can Action Carousel. So you should be seeing my screen now. This is today's action. Tell your state leaders to pass a common sense bill deregulating plug-in solar. And as you'll see, it just takes 3 clicks to take an action. First, you click Do It Now. Then you choose how you want to contact the decision maker you're reaching out to. In this case, I'll click Send Message. All you have to do is preview the message. You have the option to edit it, but because I put in my address before, it knows who my state, federal, and sometimes local officials are. Then all you have to do is hit Send Message, and you've taken action. So it's really that easy. Earlier, I mentioned earning points towards the planting of real trees, and so far, the Climate Action Now community has actually planted over 500,000 trees together, which is pretty incredible. So here is the QR code for today's action, but if you want to take action on your computer, I'm also going to drop a link to today's action in the chat. So let me just grab that really quick and pop that in the chat. There we go. All right, so you have that if you want to take action on your computer. And then if you'd rather use your phone or tablet, just hold up your phone or QR code and to the QR code and scan it. Of course, if you've never used the carousel, you'll have to put in some basic information to take action, like your name, address, and email. And you'll also be encouraged to set a personalized message. For those of you who already have app accounts but are using the carousel for the first time, don't worry, you won't have to start from scratch. When you enter your email, you'll be prompted to enter a verification code. And once you do that, it will transfer all of your progress from the app to the carousel. So that's all from me. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, but turn my camera into the action slide so you still have access to it. Now I'll hand things back over to Amber to introduce our speakers and get things started. Over to you, Amber.
Thanks so much, Kaylee. All right, so today we have a great lineup for you. Today, Sam Matey-Coste, the editor-in-chief at Climate Action Now, will be talking with our expert guest speaker, Kevin Chou. Sam authors the Dose of Climate Hope Substack newsletter for Climate Action Now. Dose of Climate Hope illustrates new technologies, policy solutions, people, and trends that give us reason to be hopeful about the climate. Kevin Chou is the executive director and co-founder of BrightSaver, a nonprofit working to make plug-in solar affordable and accessible to everyone. BrightSaver is helping bring simple plug-in solar technology to more households, making it easier for people, no matter their income or housing situation, to generate clean energy and lower their electricity cost. Kevin is a longtime entrepreneur with experience building and scaling companies like Kabam to more than 400 million in annual revenue with more than 500 million users worldwide. Kevin now focuses on accelerating the adoption of clean energy solutions and expanding access to solar power for everyday people. We'll now transition into our live interview. As you hear from Kevin and Sam, please type any questions you'd like to contribute to the discussion into the chat. Over to you, Sam.
All right, hi. I am super excited about this monthly dose because, in my personal opinion, we are the leader of what I think deserves to be called the most successful civic movement in America right now. There are many bigger ones. There are many working on very important issues. That's not a slight to anyone else. But Bright Sable has managed to laser focus on one specific intervention that is a really clear win-win-win that can resonate across political divides and clearly improves people's lives, especially now at a time of skyrocketing fossil fuel prices due to an insane war of whim in the Middle East. Um, and they have been laser focused on this for years. I've been talking with them about this since like January 2025. I've had the privilege of seeing them grow, seeing them go from this one thing a friend of mine was working on to front page of the New York Times, and they have just pulled off some truly unbelievable stuff. In the last 2 years, I don't think any other organization has seen more success in terms of like a bill that they and only they were promoting past um in multiple states entirely thanks to them. So, Kevin, thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for your incredible leadership and that of everyone at Bright Sable and the whole movement that you've helped coordinate in bringing plug-in solar to America.
Oh, thank you, Sam. I'm so happy to be here today. You guys have been such amazing allies from the very beginning. In fact, Sam, you were the first one to write about our work, when we first started the organization. So it's kind of come full circle.
Your highlights.
We've made so much progress since you first wrote about us. I think probably in about January or February of 2025. We're now at a point where we have 32 states that are considering legislation. We've been able to pass laws in Utah already. That took effect last year, and then this year we've already got Virginia as well as Maine, I think your home state, to cross both chambers. And the bill's sitting on the governor's desk. Both governors have indicated that they're going to be signing this bill. So we're making a lot of progress, and we've got a lot of other states where we've either passed the Energy Committee or even had a full floor vote. So we're making a lot of progress in addition to a number of other things in the ecosystem that are coming together. So very excited to talk about all that today.
Before we get into the details, could you just share that lovely map that you shared with us earlier? Just share that with the group, just to show just to give a preview of the dashboard you were showing of what it currently looks like state by state.
Yeah, absolutely. So this will be published late this week. I think, Sam, it'd be awesome if we'll give you the exclusive sort of ability to publish this.
Heck yes, absolutely.
Early. It'll be ready late this week, early next week. There's still a little bit of bugs that we're ironing out here, but we want to create a very simple way where people can, for example, they could click on California and they could see like what's going on, and and kind of be able to follow along. They could click on like Maine. You could kind of select the states that you care about, and then kind of follow along and see what's happening in the legislation, and follow all the policy work that's going on right now.
And this is amazing. Like, none of this existed anywhere like this time last year. Like, this is
That's right.
ridiculously fast. This is a national movement sprung up in what in political terms is overnight. And it is, like you said, because it is such a clear ask. What you are asking, and you're probably familiar with plug-in solar, basically it's solar that is like, unlike rooftop solar, is sort of a smaller, more flexible, can be hung from a balcony, except put in a backyard, accessible to rentals, you can just plug it in. And what you're asking is that this technology, which already is in like over 1 million households in Germany alone, which the UK government announced just this month that they're trying to scale up as fast as possible, this technology, which has proven itself to be incredibly safe and reliable in many other countries, be legalized in the US at the state level, or effectively legalized, because it's technically legal, but you have to do all the same paperwork you would for like a nuclear power plant in terms of grid interconnection. So it's ridiculously complex and difficult, even if it's technically legal. Practically legalized. You want this to be practically legalized with a one-page bill that has zero fiscal implications. it costs no money to tell people, hey, you can put up your own solar panels now. You can just change the law to make that a thing. And
That's right.
and that is that is like an unbelievable level of win-win-win. And this is why the full balcony solar bill that you guys sponsored in Utah last year was passed by a Republican in a state with a majority Republican legislature and a Republican governor, because
That's right.
it is it is really hard, although as we'll get to, some people are managing it, to come up with reasons to oppose, give people the right to buy a solar panel and put it up in their own property. Like, as you know, as I think several people have been saying, in states where this bill has not yet passed, it is far easier to buy an assault rifle than a solar panel. And at the very least, making it easy to buy solar panels should be something we can all agree on.
Yeah, that's right. So that was a hypothesis when we started Bright Saver, was that we could find a way. And this is when we started Bright Saver, Trump was elected, but had not yet taken office. So that was kind of the political. It's hard to remember back. I mean, that was only a year and a quarter ago or so. But even back then, our hypothesis was that we could, this would be popular on both sides of the aisle, and that this is just a common sense thing that would accelerate our transition to clean energy, and that we could find ways that in both red states, blue states, purple states, we could find allies and supporters and get this done. And that's absolutely been true. And to your point, Sam, Utah was kind of Republican led in terms of this bill and policy initiative. And we're very excited that that was a state that we started in, and now with states like Maine and like Maine being a little bit blue, and then Virginia being kind of purple. It's turning a little bit blue, but it's very much a purple state, and this has been very popular in multiple states.
Yeah,
but really we started. I mean, just to back up. I mean, this is the core attention, and I think to this audience here, the motivation for Bright Saver was, frankly, we really wanted to do, like, all of the founders were very motivated by climate issues, and so we looked and we said, okay, what area could we bring our expertise to, and make a difference, and make that difference at a kind of speed and scale, especially in a kind of back then a Trump-led administration. What could we do, in that environment? And so, a lot of people, way more than just the people on this video, on this Zoom session, think that climate change is real. I think the big problem for people like us, even, was who started Bright Saver, was like, we just didn't feel like we knew, like, where could we even start? Where could we have agency, in this? All right. And so a big part of climate, and I think the importance of climate action now is, like, you give people agency. People can at least go right to their state lawmakers or governors or local officials and tell them to pay attention to certain issues, and that's a great way to have agency. But what are other ways that we can have agency as citizens, and who care about a sustainable future, who care about a world that our children are going to grow up in? And I think that was really kind of the motivation for Bright Saver, was how do we unlock kind of this whole category of consumer-led appliances that you can essentially go buy, and you can plug into a wall, and you can start generating your own energy. You can start saving money on your energy bills, and that. But most importantly, it would help you as a citizen feel like you had agency to go take action and do something that matters. So we're really happy that we're making a ton of progress against that.
And that, yeah, and what you said, agency, really is powerful, because in a time of crazy people making stupid decisions occupying many world headlines, this is literally power to the people. It is a way that people can get their own power. And there's this fundamental, like, decentralized aspect of renewable energy. Like, I saw I saw a joke recently. Well, opponents of renewable energy say that the wind doesn't work when the wind isn't blowing, sun doesn't work when the sun isn't shining, and that's not even true anymore thanks to batteries. But, well, fossil fuels don't work when the Strait of Hormuz isn't Hormuzzing. Like, like, renewables are fundamentally way less fragile than the system they're replacing. EMBL, this great think tank, says they've run the numbers. Every single country in the world has more than enough sun and wind and could get enough batteries to become completely 100% self-sufficient, not just in grid electricity, but in electrifying transport and heating and everything with just renewable energy. There's a vanishingly small amount of the economy that we can't electrify. It's mostly just jet fuel now. Like shipping and aviation were the two big ones, but just recently China started building electric containerized ships. Like there's one doing sea trials off Shanghai now, so it's really mostly just jet fuel that can't be electrified now, and there's a lot of work going on there. And as someone just put in the chat, batteries just mean that the intermittency problem is solved. And I'm just doing like broad scale renewable stuff and zooming in. They'll be coming from like California to South Australia to China. In so many jurisdictions, they'll be becoming a primary source of dispatchable power during peak time. Like you can just charge them up and then away they go. We're just starting to explore the possibility space of battery chemistry. There is a ridiculous amount of amazing stuff happening in renewable energy, and you are really leading on bringing that to America. Because, and I think this is something that is just beginning to percolate into American political consciousness, thanks to a bunch of different sources, from the book Abundance to movements like yours. Um, Increasingly, a lot of the coolest technology in the world is not available in the United States. And part of that's like national security issues and tariffs and stuff like that. Part of that's regulatory sclerosis. Like in most of the world, from Pakistan to Australia to the Congo to Germany to Mexico to the UK, well, not the UK until recently actually, but you can buy a solar panel and put it up in your house and plug it into your wall. And you can't do that in the US. That violates grid interconnection rules unless you do a whole bunch of paperwork.
That's
So
right.
that's what we're trying to fix.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's really pretty amazing. I mean, look, the U.S. is the first country to have an organized corporation that became an electric power company, right? So Thomas Edison, and Edison Power Company started in New York, and that was really the first sort of corporation. And it was electricity back then, it was about 150 years ago, was seen as such an amazing public good, a good that should be available to all Americans. And so, back then when the technology was so new, it's crazy to talk about electricity as a new technology, but that's what it was 150 years ago. And it was, we basically came up with this regulatory and policy framework paired with like basically public-private, that where the government encouraged private companies to build out, essentially power plants, and that those entities would be regulated by the government, specifically at a state level. And then that would be the framework by which we would try to get electricity specifically to as many Americans as possible. In over the next 100 years or so, it did a phenomenal job. We were able to bring electricity to a very large majority of Americans. But that same framework today is, to your point, it is creating regulatory paralysis, where that company that is granted a monopoly to build out their, energy generation and distribution systems. If you as a consumer buy a solar panel and you plug it into your house, that's viewed as creating a generation system, on the grid that is, controlled by the utility. And so, and again, that all made sense, 100, even 50 years ago, where energy generation was generally very large scale, and the economics didn't really work, at a small scale. And rooftop solar was kind of one of the first, major things that a lot of people wanted to get, so we created a small exemption around rooftop solar. And that's why getting rooftop solar requires that long interconnection, process that is very costly and takes a long time for a lot of people. But this whole idea now with plug-in solar is to create an exemption for interconnection. Just say, look, if you're creating a lot of power, interconnection can still make sense. But if you're generating enough power that basically it's just self-consumption, what you would personally use, and we've defined that as 1,200 watts in pretty much all the states that we're working in, you shouldn't have to go through that interconnection process that is designed for a much, much larger power system. And I think the analogy that we've used for a lot of politicians and staff members and people thinking about this in our education process is that if you want to go drive an 18-wheeler on public roads, yes, you need to go through a big testing process and licensing process to make sure that you understand how to operate that vehicle safely, where you can cause harm to other people. However, if you're going to ride a bicycle on a public, road, you don't need that, right? Because the whole point is that that level of that mode of transportation doesn't you don't need a license to go do that, right? And so we just haven't had that same framework applied to the energy where, if you're going to go get a big electrical generation system, yeah, you should probably go through that interconnection queue. But if you're going to get a 1200-watt system or less and generate energy for your own consumption, that's more like riding a bicycle on the road, and you shouldn't have to go through a complex licensing and interconnection process to go get that done. And I think that idea has become really powerful, and we're making a lot of progress. And we're also, setting up these laws in such a way, and this policy in such a way where it's not just, the face of it is solar, because solar is easy to understand, but we really kind of designed this legislation and policy in such a way that allows battery systems to be hooked up a lot more easier under the same kind of framework as well. And so we envision a world where somebody, potentially maybe they don't have enough room, or for a number of reasons can't put a solar panel up even, while you can still get a battery system. So a battery system that will help with resilience, but it also help with, we see a lot of people being interested in, hey, I want to charge my battery up during the day when the electricity is cheap, and then I want to use that energy at night when both, the grid is dirtier, plus time of use and other energy pricing issues come into play where the electricity is just more expensive. And so we see, we really designed this legislation to try to create as broad of an umbrella for, this whole idea of I can have agency in the way that I generate or store power and then use it for myself.
Yeah, and that's a very American thing, isn't it? Like the way Bill McKibben puts it is, get the government off my rooftop or get the government out of my balcony. Like you can sell that as a you can sell that to almost anyone of any political persuasion, from a climate perspective to sort of a personal freedom perspective to a consumer rights perspective to a don't trust the system perspective, just because it is such a multifaceted good to be able to generate some of your own electricity at home.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's exactly that independence is such a key selling point, especially in states that really, where people really care about that. And then in other states where people have a real affordability issue around electricity, we focus generally on affordability. Affordability works across all states, and then we tack on this independence as well. And, just in today's political environment, sadly, we've tried and we've talked to people that really care about climate issues, but climate issues is a very small, the world has just changed so much, sadly, where our politicians don't want to be talking about climate issues right now. So even though we're incredibly motivated by climate issues, and I know this audience here is motivated by climate issues, you'll see us generally in all the headlines, it's all about affordability, accessibility, and independence as the key issues that people care about today. And that's fine. We'll lean into that because I think we can make a lot of progress by focusing on those issues as the wrapper for how do we get more clean energy everywhere.
Yeah, and the sort of good news there is renewable energy wins on affordability too. It kind of doesn't matter why you're doing it as long as you're doing the good important thing. And renewable
That's
energy is clearly the thing keeping the thing keeping the lights on. The thing even the sort of even the much lower than it should be amount of utility scale solar, wind, and batteries coming onto the American grid is clearly what's stabilizing the grid in the face of extreme weather. Like when Texas had natural gas infrastructure froze over in the early 2020s during a winter storm. Since then, there's been a bunch of solar and battery booms, and now they just weathered a very similar storm. And without those sort of fossil fuel fragility problems. And this is fundamentally renewable energy is a workhorse, not a show horse. It just does the job. Whether you believe in it or not, whether you buy it because you want to save money or because you want to save the planet, it will help you. And increasingly, because it's the cheapest electricity source, solar is the cheapest electricity source in the history of humanity, getting cheaper all the time. Increasingly, the only barriers left, because there's no more economic barriers, or at least no more sort of free market economic barriers. The only barriers left are the political ones that mandate these soft costs, like the interconnection bureaucracy paperwork, or mandates that only super trained Paulson can install it or something, it essentially forces you to pay more money than you need, money that people in other countries don't have to pay to get your own solar power. And that's a big part of what you're trying to fix.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I think we're all pretty cognizant that in rooftop solar, which is great, by the way, obviously we love more rooftop solar. We love to reduce the red tape around rooftop solar, and we do collaborate and work with a lot of organizations that are focused on that issue. But specifically, we also say, let's just remove all the red tape, around, let's remove all of the soft costs. What is it going to take to remove 100% of the soft costs? And that is something that is a big part of the aha for why plug-in solar is going to work, right? So if we could get rid of all the soft costs, as well as reduce the time from the time that somebody is interested in getting and adopting a clean energy generation system to the time that they can actually have it working and plugged in and generating energy, we could reduce that into one afternoon. Like, just so many more people are going to get it, right? So if we just look at it from an economic standpoint, we wrote a white paper about this, and we did a bunch of behavioral economics modeling, but just based on cost savings alone, roughly 60 million Americans will dramatically benefit from this. And I think we're going to get to, even today, when you look at Sunrun and some of the leading companies for rooftop solar, the primary way that people buy these systems, and obviously those are very costly systems, but the primary way they buy them is through either PPA or a lease. Because what people really want to do is say, hey, this is a unique thing that I could buy that's actually going to generate money for me. And so what I want to do is match the money that I'm going to save on my energy with how I pay for these systems. Well, those people are paying for a ton of soft costs that were involved in getting that rooftop sold and installed and going through the interconnection process and so forth. We're going to remove all of that from plug-in solar. And then I think what we're going to see is a really interesting adoption curve where there's already financing options that are broadly available to people, either through their credit union, their bank, a buy now, pay later system. We're working with a bunch of green banks, right now to get them to understand this new wave of policy coming into place, so that people can hopefully be able to say, look, I can buy one of these systems for $500 to $1,000, and if I can afford that up front, great, I'll do that. But what I really want to do is say, hey, I'm going to save, $50 to $60 a month, and then I could buy one of these systems. I could just buy one of these systems and ideally pay like $30 a month and be generating cash day one. And I think those types of financing options and so forth will become we're really working hard to bring those to market and educate people and the banks and the financing arms that this is coming, and that because we're reducing all of the soft costs, the payback and the cash flow for consumers is going to look really good. They could really be set up and start saving money literally from day one if you can access the right financing vehicle, for these devices. So not only are we going to bring the price points down, but I think we can also change the math in terms of how your energy savings are going to be matched with the way that you can pay for these products in the future, which will bring these to, the 60 million people that we're talking about.
So in terms of practicalities, what are the remaining barriers between us and getting to the sort of ideal situation like in Germany where you can go to IKEA and buy like a fully functional home power plant? Like the like I like what's the status on the those laboratory certifications? What's the status on like where do you actually buy the thing because it's not in Walmart yet? Like my parents and granddad live in Maine. My parents in a house, my granddad in an apartment nearby. They would love to have plug-in solar, and Maine literally just this week passed the bill, and it looks like it'll be signed into law by the governor very quickly. It's happening so fast. It is literally my job to keep up with stuff like this, and it's happening faster than I can track. Like I literally just finished an article on plug-in solar progress a couple days ago, planned for Tuesday, and it's already out of date. Like it passed the Virginia state legislature unanimously. It's going to be signed into law pretty soon by the Virginia governor. It's passed out of committee in California. It passed out of committee in Colorado. There's so much progress happening. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But the point is, so with all that happening, in a couple weeks, probably the governors of Virginia and Maine will sign those bills that pass the legislature into law. What does someone in Virginia and Maine who wants plug-in solar do next?
Yeah, so I think there's already more and more. We're already connected to a bunch of both significant size manufacturers, but also startup manufacturers of plug-in solar systems and batteries that are trying to go through the certification right now and start selling their products. So part of I think there's like practically speaking, there's sort of three things that are happening, right? One is we just need a big enough market for businesses to invest the capital to get started and to bring new products to market. And so even last year, we were like, hey, we got Utah passed, and we started talking to a lot of the manufacturers, and the manufacturers said, Utah is great. Some of these manufacturers are based in Europe and in Asia, and they said, how big of a market is Utah? And they looked at their sales numbers, because a lot of these companies sell like RV, solar systems and a few other things that are smaller niches of solar. And the reality is Utah it was great that they passed a law, but Utah actually, the electricity is the third cheapest in the United States. And so it's just not that big of a solar market, from a pure economic standpoint. And so they told us, and the manufacturer said, this is great. One state is one state. We hope to see this as a trend, for us to make a much bigger investment into the product R&D and marketing that would be necessary to bring products to market and go through certification and so forth. All of that's going to cost us a lot of money to get started. And so we need to see more states, than just Utah, right? And we said, well, how many states? How big of a market? And so basically the market size that we triangulated on talking to a lot of manufacturers was basically the equivalent of 5 Utahs in terms of total market size that would start to get manufacturers being serious, taking it seriously. So the reality is, frankly, if we just get a New York across the finish line, which I think we're going to get this year, because we've done a bunch of work with the utilities and a lot of the lawmakers there, and it's just like New York is feeling really good. But really, we just need a big enough market here in the United States where manufacturers can make that investment in R&D, they can make that investment in marketing, and bring products to the United States. So the first reason why you can't go to Home Depot right now is that there's nobody making these products at scale right now for the United States.
In Europe
the US. That's right. They make them in Europe, and primarily it's Germany, although now it's like several other countries in Europe as well. But those products work on 240 volt, and they have a different safety certification and so forth. And so the US, one of the things that adds cost in the US, forget the permitting and interconnection, is just going through the UL certifications, which is, it's not a crazy amount of cost, but you needed to make that upfront investment. And manufacturers want to know that if they're going to design something for UL certification, go through that process, that there's going to be a big enough market on the other side. And so I think we're going to hit that critical mass this year in 2026, where we're going to get enough states. I mean, Virginia is an 8.8 million person, state that's sitting on the governor's desk. We talked about Maine, we talked about Utah. We've got a lot of other states that I think we're going to get past the finish line, and that'll create the big enough market when manufacturers will make that product. Then these manufacturers then need to work on their distribution agreements and supply chains so that a Home Depot in Virginia can carry this product. But I think what we'll start to see first is that e-commerce companies will be able to, sort of build out a warehouse and shipping. And so you'll be able to go online and order these things a little bit earlier. So EcoFlow has been selling in Utah via e-commerce, even though EcoFlow products, you could get them at Costco, in Utah. You could buy other types of EcoFlow products through Costco, but Costco won't carry a plug-in solar unit for right now because of the certification and all these other needs. So I think it's just going to take a little bit of time for the manufacturers to get certified, and then for retail distribution to pick it all up, and so that you can go drive to a local store and get it.
But in the meantime, and I really, really like this part of what you've been doing, White Safo has really been putting the punk in solar punk by making some making some plug-in solar systems available even in states, which when you started doing this was all states, where it is technically still kind of illegal to do it without an interconnection agreement. I know that some of those early adopters are on this call now, like Amanda Royal, and who's written a great article about her experience with plug-in solar. Um, and you've basically said like, are you really gonna try to arrest someone for putting up a solar panel in their own backyard? Like you've gone to, are utilities really gonna try to push to actually enforce this? Because this is clearly not what interconnection agreements were intended to police. So you know this sort of growing wave of across the country rebel plug-in solar installers, not waiting for the states to jump through the regulatory hoops and make it fully legal and get stores to carry it, have been making national news. They were on NPR just recently. How's that going? Like, can you say like how many people are in the plug-in solar underground so far?
Well, for the first thing I want to say is that it's not it's solar punkish, but it's not really you're not breaking a law necessarily. By doing this, what you're in there's different types of utilities. There's some utilities that are fantastic to work with, but let me just and this is too broad of a distinction, but you on the one hand you have utilities that we call IOUs or investor-owned utilities. And so these are companies where you can go onto your brokerage account and you could buy like a share of PG&E, for example, right? And so these utilities, they're just operating based off of their market incentives. And and the market incentive is, hey, I want to build out all of my energy generation and distribution and transmission, and then I go to the PUC and then I show them how much money I spent, and then I get to raise the rate of my electricity, right? And so if somebody goes through and puts up their own plug-in solar unit, they're just going to be buying less electricity from them, and they kind of care about that. And it is why in California we have all three utilities that are publicly owned, investor-owned utilities are fighting the plug-in solar bill, in California, and that's something that we're dealing with in California and in a few other states. And in other states, there's municipal or state-owned utilities that they're there to serve their citizens, and they want to keep their electricity rates low. They of course want it to be sustainable and so forth, but they're not trying to make a big profit off of the electricity that they sell. And in those cities and in those territories, it is just easier for us to work with the utilities, and they're really interested in this new technology, and they want to understand it. They want to understand the safety, and then in general, some of these utilities have actually supported the work that we're doing, as well. And so it's just market incentives, at the end of the day, that's governing how much a utility is opposing or not opposing, solar in their geography. So that is something that we are cognizant about, and we, like at the end of the day, to make plug-in solar broadly work, we have to make this the case to everyone that this is going to be better for the people in a state. And so the beauty is that we could do that in a state legislator as a state legislation bill, as opposed to going to federal or even having to do it city by city. So it's actually that's why we identified plug-in solar as a really interesting beachhead where we can make a lot of progress in a short amount of time, even if federally it was impossible to get anything done. We do this work state by state. There's 50 states. There's a few territories that we'd love to get to, as well. And we've been really lucky to find some early supporters and people who say, you know what, I'm gonna I live in a territory where the utility, probably doesn't care, as much, or they live in a territory where they live in an area where they can install these things, and they could go through that interconnection process, which is overkill for plug-in solar, of course, but you can't actually go through and do that. So we've actually helped a few people try to go through the interconnection process, with their utilities by getting these devices. In either case, you can sort of have this done. And then a lot of what BrightSaver currently does is we work with manufacturers who are trying to get into the US market, and we focus on people who already have an interconnection. Because they have rooftop solar, but they bought that rooftop solar maybe 10 years ago, 5 years ago. They now have an EV, or maybe they put in a new heat pump, or they're just using a lot more electricity. And now they want to expand that solar, And guess what? That's actually incredibly difficult to do and very expensive to do. And so plug-in solar actually becomes a really great area where it's already legal because you have interconnection. The regulation in California allows you to expand your solar by 1 kilowatt without going through the whole rigmarole again. And so that's kind of a very specific area, for example, where this is like clearly legal, and we're able to get early adopters of plug-in solar technology started, start bringing down the cost, get manufacturers to work on their supply chains, and bring this technology to the US today.
And that is just spectacular. Like, you are really working hard on this. You've thought this out. And fundamentally, this is something that I think people didn't realize was possible. This is the kind of version of renewable energy that everyone dreams of and that we can now have, and that in practice was inaccessible to so many people because only homeowners could get rooftop solar, and then they had to wade through oceans of paperwork, and there's shortages of electricians in many states, and so many annoying things. But actually, this can just go exponential. Like this, like we totally can just go like, yeah, like this thing speaks for itself. We have 1 million people with plug-in solar in Germany. This clearly works. We can just do this. We can have nice things, which is a feeling that the last few years of news headlines may have tried to beat out of us, but can still be a thing we can feel. So could you just address like really the only like slim lead people try to stand on when they try to oppose these bills? Like I know there's been some opposition in places like Wyoming, Georgia, is to try to plead safety concerns, which is clearly bullshit on the face of it because there's a million people who have these already in Germany, and it's obviously fine. But just to sort of address that, can you tell us why this is safe?
Yeah. So there's the beauty of plug-in solar is that it rides and uses all of the technology that's been developed over decades for rooftop solar. So the first safety issue that generally a lot of opposition will point to is kind of just and it's like crazy to me because I feel like the opposition is smart enough where they know this is not a real safety issue, but they bring it up anyway, which is that these systems will hurt the people who are working who are called linemen, who are working to restore the power to the grid when the grid goes down. Right. So let's say you've got a big storm.
Like, no, they won't. No more than your toaster.
No, they
Yeah.
won't. All inverters in the United States right now, and this has been true for decades, they all shut off when there's an outage in the grid. And so these inverters are called grid tied or grid following inverters. And so what they do is every few milliseconds, they pulse and they make sure that there's already a frequency of that electricity in your outlet, or if it's on the roof, they make sure that your home is connected to the grid. And if that grid is down, the inverter shuts off, as well. And so that's a really important safety consideration. It is probably also one of the areas that a lot of people get confused. They say, oh, if you don't have rooftops, if you have rooftop solar, you're well aware of this, because if anytime that the grid goes down, you're like, oh, my rooftop solar also shuts off too. That is a really important safety issue because the linemen who are working to get that grid restored, if you're generating energy and you're not using all of it and it's flowing back to the grid, it can't hurt that lineman. But that technology has been very sophisticated. It's been developed for decades. It's in all plug-in solar, at this point in time. And so that's a really important safety consideration. And that is something that that the plug-in technology already does really well.
So
Now,
it is literally impossible to buy a plug-in solar set that will send electricity back into the grid when it's supposed to be shut off.
That's right. It's illegal. It's just impossible. Nobody makes inverters that do that at this point in time. So
the primary safety consideration is just completely non-existent.
Exactly. So this whole issue of linemen, being put at risk because of plug-in solar technology just doesn't exist, and it's just a false claim that a lot of people have. But it can sound really scary, and so for a state lawmaker that knows just a little bit about electricity and so forth, and they may not be an expert on all solar devices and so forth, it sounds like a real safety issue that needs to be investigated. And that's like one of the first things that a lot of people a lot of the opposition will try to throw up. But in general, yeah, go ahead, Sam.
So this really gets into some interesting sort of questions, because not to tar all utilities with the same brush. Some are great, like you said, some have been working with you, but some utilities, and in some states they've managed to derail bills, have offered testimony that this could pose a danger where they clearly know better, or at the very
Yes,
least should be able to, they clearly know that it doesn't. So
that's
like clearly, like at the very least, like selective omission of facts, like none of the plug-in solar systems actually do this scary thing I'm describing to attack you. So do you want to speculate? And if you don't want to, I will, on why people are doing that.
I, as we talked about, it really is, for a lot of people, for a lot of these utilities that are investor owned, they are defending their business model, and they know that politically, it's really a lot of utilities are in political hot water because they've been raising rates, and it's creating public outcry, for it. And so it's not politically feasible for them to say, oh, this is, I don't want plug-in solar because it's going to make my business model worse. That's not something that utilities can easily say in a way that, when a bill is being considered. And so I think, the reality is a lot of them will bring up a safety issue, as the primary way to fight, solar. And this is both for rooftop solar as well as for plug-in solar. The safety issue is the number one thing that a lot of the utilities will try to focus on to kill bills that aim to reduce the red tape around getting solar installed.
And fundamentally, this the utilities only are allowed to have natural monopolies. There have been court cases on this because we let them because we think it provides net societal benefits. They are now kind of
Right.
abusing that position to try to stomp on a new technology that allows people to not need them, which is, a very common thing we see, especially in renewable energy and also across many other fields where sort of scrappy new startups take on incumbents.
That's
But
right.
but
And I think this is why, a lot of us who really care about the climate are for climate action. It feels it's really challenging, right? So we fill out these forms and we try to call our state lawmakers and so forth. But it's really complicated because the state lawmakers, they'll hear and they'll see that their constituents really care about, the transition to clean energy, and that people want to do that. But at the end of the day, like people are, like all of us are waiting for kind of these top-down solutions where the lawmakers and the utilities will get together magically and figure out how to start the transition and accelerate the transition to our clean energy future. But it's all these weird, incentives. It's the fact that we allow these utility companies to have, these monopolies in the areas that they operate in, and it's all this like tangle of knots that basically prevent action from being taken. And so a lot of what we're trying to do right now is just like identify this one area where we can make a lot of rapid progress, untangle that part first, and then try to do more and more to continue to accelerate our transition.
Yeah, absolutely. And like this is what is great about this is something people can do. And and the thing that's really shocked the world recently is by the way, we just have a question that I want to highlight. Can I just buy from you, Kevin, and put the unit in my driveway versus on the building roof? So I know I think you guys only ship to California right now. Is that still correct? But yeah, how soon can people buy from you?
Yeah, so today we generally just do California because we really focus on people who, because we're advocating for these policies to be changed. We try not to do anything that is too solar punkish. We really focus on saying how do we be a good player and follow the rules as they stand today, and then how do we play within the system to change the rules so that way more people can have access, to this. And so, yes, we generally try to sell to people who live in the state of California and they fall into this category where they have solar already and they're looking to expand it, and that this technology, which will be the same technology that any renter can buy in the future. But we're basically getting the market primed now and saying, hey, we're actually doing some good volume here in California, where it's clearly legal if you already have rooftop solar, and we test the technology, we install this technology for people who have complicated electrical setups and so forth. that need like because you do need a dedicated circuit for this amount of power that you're adding to your system. So if you don't have that, if you have a really old home that doesn't have dedicated circuits, we basically help you navigate all that. And so today it's just California and just people who have rooftop solar that want to expand it. That's the kind of one clearly legal within the rules part of the market. We're of course looking at Virginia, we're looking at Maine, we're looking at New York, we're looking at all these states that we're very close to passing the laws, the new laws to exempt interconnection. And in those states, we're going to be looking to provide a system that is going to be legal in that framework. The other manufacturers that we love a lot, and we know that there's going to be products, and some of you might have some of these products, some of their other battery and other products. So EcoFlow, provides a great system today. They have a battery inverter system that's all combined together. They're selling in Utah. It's a great product. Anchor also has a product that they're bringing to market very soon. So there's going to be a lot of different, and that's how we all win, as a society, is that there's going to be lots of different types of companies that will bring products to market. And we're very excited about the laws that we're passing. It'll make our business selling stuff harder, but I think that's okay. What we want tens of millions of people to be able to get one of these systems very quickly in the next few years. And the only way that happens is we create the right regulatory structure, and then there's a competitive market where the prices rapidly come down, and then everyone benefits from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And someone has a good question in the chat. Is a city permit required? If so, are cities familial? All cities familiar with what to do? And someone else was just sort of confused about whether you needed rooftop solar first. And I just answered in the chat. To the best of my understanding, pre-legalization, before these bills will pass, we're kind of using a loophole / ambiguity to count only plug-in solar deployment as an upgrade to rooftop solar. But post-legalization, post-passing all these bills that we're working so hard to pass, plug-in solar is for everybody. You totally don't need rooftop solar first.
Yeah. So I see a lot of people referencing SB 868, which is the bill in California. So if we could pass that bill, which we'll know in the next couple of months, you're not like anybody can go get a plug-in solar system and plug it in, and the utilities are not permitted to harass you or to say that you're breaking their policies or anything else if we could get that bill passed. That's why that bill is so important right now.
Yeah, once we pass those bills, you can just buy it. No city permit, no needing to reverse engineer a loophole so it counts as part of your pre-existing rooftop solar. The point of these bills is to get to the place where so many other people around the world are, like in Germany, where you can just actually buy solar panel and plug it into the wall, and it will help power your home.
That's right. Yeah.
And yeah,
I see this question in chat a little bit. Yes. So today, BrightSaver, our work with the manufacturers and so forth, we will only sell them to somebody that has a rooftop solar. That's not what we want to do. That's not where we want to be, in a year from now. But that's what we have to do.
While it's not fully legal.
That's right. And that's something that is really important, because when we get in front of state lawmakers and we talk about kind of our overall organization and what we're trying to do, and we are a nonprofit, we're a 501c3 nonprofit. We generally do all this work so we can deeply understand the technology, deeply understand what are the exact living conditions that people have in their electrical systems. How do we make these products as easy to install as possible, but still go through the full safety certification? And so us working right now with people with existing rooftop solar allows us to get the products ready so that when these laws pass, then that learning gets in the product designs get that much better, much faster for everyone else.
Yeah, absolutely. And someone just put in a good question, like, aren't subsidies expiring soon? And one of the great things about plug-in solar, especially with avoiding these soft costs, is that we hopefully don't need no subsidies. Like, we don't need no freaking subsidies. Like, these are so good, so cheap, like, and you don't have to pay through the nose to fill out a whole bunch of paperwork and have only like someone with supreme 10th level guild membership install them. You can actually just buy them, and solar panels are getting cheaper all the time, even when we can't buy from China due to tariffs. And this should be very, very cost effective, even completely without subsidies, which is a big part of why it's encouraging to be doing this under a crazy anti-renewables federal regime.
Right. So in
Yeah.
California, if we could get SB 868 passed and the prices, there's no reason why the prices won't be similar to what we see in Europe right now. So the prices in Europe for a 800-watt system, kind of about $500, right now. And so if you could buy an 800-watt system for $500 in California, you would get that system paid back in less than 2 years. And that's how much money you would save, right? And it literally become the best financial investment you could make as an individual. Like you're basically making about 50% a year IRR through that type of investment, and that's why we think like people in California should go crazy for this, because it will be something that you can't even get better returns in the stock market relative to a plug-in solar unit.
And this is not theoretical. This is a party that the rest of the world gets. This is a party that the rest of the world is getting to have, that we are trying to get our states to allow us to join. Like entire energy systems are being reworked from the ground up around the world as people from Germany to Australia to Pakistan or doing exactly this. So thank you for bringing this to America.
Oh, thanks, Sam. Appreciate it. No, it's everyone here. It's really like all the work that people are doing to right now. This bill is going to be voted, and if you live in California, this bill has just passed the Senate Energy Committee. It will go to the floor of the Senate. So anybody taking action right now through through Climate Action Now, writing to their state senators is going to be a really important thing. And if we pass the Senate, then it'll go to the House, and then sort of then writing to your House representative will be really important as well. Prior to that vote. So really, thank you to everyone. And it's not just California. We have bills going on across 32 different states at this point. And so, taking action, writing or calling your state lawmakers that are working on and considering this bill that's moving through their legislatures is a really important action that everyone can do, and we really appreciate everyone who's taking action.
Yeah, and thank you all. All right, we're coming up.
Thank you so much, Kevin and Sam.
Yeah.
Yep, we're coming up on the hour. Thank you so much, Kevin and Sam, for this hopeful conversation. It's really incredible to see how much plug-in solar has grown and hopefully will continue to grow. Before we wrap up, we're going to hear a few things from our founder and CEO, Brett Walter.
Hi, yeah. So, hey, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Balcony solar has got to be one of the most exciting things happening in the country at this point, and it's an area where all of us can have an impact. I know we're frustrated with what's happening at the federal level. Am I not? I'm unmuted, right?
Yeah, no, we can hear you.
We can hear.
Okay. Yeah, and especially thank you to Kevin and Cora Stryker, who works with him, and his fantastic team for really taking this on and doing something tangible. We at Climate Action Now are really, really happy to support that. In the final minute here, I just wanted to make all of you aware of some other things that you can do besides advocating for for balcony solar, some other things that you can do to expand your impact. One huge thing that you can do, and I don't know how many of you are aware of this, but this tool that you've been using, the Climate Action Now Action Carousel, is available for free to any organization that wants to advocate for climate and balcony solar and all the other clean energy and preservation of the natural world. This is a free technology available. Anybody can put it on their website. Brightsaver has the Action Carousel on the Climate Action Now website. And I'll just put that link in here right now, and y'all can go take a peek at that. If you belong to it, I know many of us belong to multiple organizations. So if you want to encourage other organizations you belong to get an Action Carousel, I'm going to give you the link right now where you need to go to request that for your group, or give that link to the heads of your group. Also, you've been hearing Sam Matey here is the editor of Climate Action Now's Daily Dose of Climate Hope. This is, folks, this is just something you need to get. It's growing like hotcakes. Every day, Sam sends you a bite-sized piece of good news. It goes into your inbox along with a specific action that you can take. And then for fun, there's a quiz on Saturdays, and then for extra fun, or actually, my favorite is the weekly summary on Sunday, where he recaps some of the really, really positive stuff. Lots of bad things happening in this country, let's be honest, but elsewhere in the world, oh man, it is rocking out there. EVs are rocking, solar is rocking, lots of good things happening, and we all need hope, in this time. So get yourself subscribed to the Dose of Climate Hope, and that will give you a boost. Another thing you can do is from now until the end of the month, Climate Action Now, in order to support our operation, has partnered with nonprofits to offer specific services. And we are doing a special. These are gift products that we've created on behalf of our nonprofit partners. Conserve.org is a wonderful conservation organization. They work with NGOs around the world to preserve a vital ecosystem. And we're working with them now to preserve huge tract of the Amazon rainforest. And you can actually, I know this sounds incredible, but you can actually preserve an acre of Amazon rainforest for $2. And we're not buying the land. The Brazilian government has designated the land, but the deal is that others like us have to come up with the money to pay the legal bills, the titling, the registrations, and things of that nature that are necessary to make this legal. So you can help protect an acre of Amazon rainforest for just $2. It's amazing. We work with another nonprofit in Africa, East Africa, Earthlungs Reforestation, which is restoring mangrove swamps, which I'm sure many of you know. Mangroves are the best bang for your buck in terms of carbon sequestration. It's an amazing natural technology, if you will, for preserving habitat, but also for conserving. And so we have Give the Gift of Trees is this gift product. Right now we are helping Earthlungs plant trees, mangroves, and there's a link for that. And then I know we all think we shouldn't be traveling, but my gosh, your uncle gets sick and he needs somebody, and you go. So we have this program called Trees for Travel, where you can reverse the emissions of your air travel very inexpensively. And the way we do that is we go to our partner friends in Africa, and we have them plant enough trees to reverse the emissions of your air travel. So those are three of our gift products that are out there. My special favorite, this isn't a sale or anything, but my favorite service that Climate Action offers is our Save the Planet, where we put a bundle together for a certain amount of money every month. We'll preserve this number of acres of rainforest. We'll deploy solar panels in the global south, and we will, restore mangrove. And here's a link for that. And I think that's all the things. These are all good, positive things that you can do with your pocketbook or with your voice or with your vote to hasten a better world, a more sane world. And so, and you're doing the most important thing now. You're showing up, and that is so key that you did this. Thank you. Kudos to all of you for taking this time on your busy day to learn about this wonderful new technology that, with Kevin's help, will soon be available to all of us. So with that, thank you so much for staying up a few minutes with me. And Sam, you had something?
And the last thing, I'm just going to take this opportunity to announce, if it all goes well, like the post-credit scene in a Marvel movie, to avoid those folks who stayed till the end of the hour. If all goes well, that mangrove reforestation partner that we just discussed, I have purchased tickets to go visit them in Kenya and write some articles from the field about their amazing work this May. So some of you may have followed my writing on clean energy in China from a trip I took this January. That was pretty popular. That's all on both my personal blog and the weekly and the Dose of Climate Hope. And if jet fuel is still available in May 2026, which is not a given, if the flight is not canceled, I will be writing a similar series from East Africa. So you'll support Climate Action Now, help support that work as well.
And I so wish I could go with you, Sam. This is going to be incredible. He's going to be there on the ground with the very people who are planting these mangrove trees and restoring Kenya National Forest as part of their nationally determined commitment under the Paris Agreement. Victor Mwanga We've been working with these folks for several years. This is an amazing team of people. They aren't in the voluntary carbon offset market. They are just doing preservation of forests and reforestation. They are providing jobs and opportunity to farmers who would otherwise be cutting down the trees. They're paying them to preserve the trees. They've come up with brilliant technology and a brilliant business model for doing this. And we're so happy at Climate Action Now to be able to support it, and so thrilled that Sam will be there giving us, I don't know, Sam, are you going to give us daily reports, from when you're there?
I'm thinking it'll be a longer trip, so I'm gonna try to do just several reports a week, intersperse it with sort of ongoing regular daily doses.
Right.
So going for more than once a week.
So that's why, folks, you got to be subscribed to our Substack, Your Dose of Climate Hope. You won't get those posts from the field unless you're subscribed to that. So
Absolutely.
again, thank you, everybody. You're all fantastic. We really appreciate your being here. Stay tuned for our next monthly dose. I don't know if we have that scheduled yet, Sam.
Not yet, no.
Okay.
By working on that.
Okay, well, there'll be another amazing monthly dose for you next month. And then Kevin, you would like to, if you have a couple more minutes to join the CAN team. Do we have the breakout room set up, Amber?
We do.
We do. Okay. So everybody else, thank you. But Kevin, if you hang for a couple more minutes, that'd be great. We'd like to debrief with you with the CAN staff. So thank you, everybody. And you get into the breakout room, Kevin, by going down and clicking on the breakout room, scroll all the way to the bottom, and you'll see where it says panel is the name of the breakout room. There's a blue join button there. And so we'll see you all next time. Thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.